Yol kapat. Bak zırhlı araçlarla yollar kapatıldı şu an.
Televizyonlar, telefonlara düşen sosyal medyadaki haberlerden şunu öğrendik. Köprü askerler tarafından kapatılmış.
Millete rastgele ateş açıyorlar.
We decided if we are going to die tonight, that's okay. We will do it for our people, for our nation, for our ideals.
Ay çok kötü bombalıyorlar.
It seemed like any ordinary day. It was a Friday, the end of a long, hot summer's working week. There was still traffic on the roads around Istanbul, people heading home late from work, or maybe just starting to head out to meet friends. But when they reached the bridges over the Bosphorus, people began to sense that something wasn't right. It didn't feel like an ordinary day anymore. At around 10 p.m, soldiers and tanks had started blocking the bridges, but no one knew why. It was the 15th of July, 2016.
Yol kapat. Bak zırhlı araçlarla yollar kapatıldı şu an. Şu an izliyorum. Kanka şu an askerlerin araçların yanından geçiyorum kanka. Of.
Burada tanklar trafiği kapattığı zaman bir trafik yoğunluğundan sebep ne olduğunu araştırmaya başladık. Çünkü anlam veremediğimiz bir yoğunluk var.
Soldiers had taken over city squares and fighter jets were flying ominously low overhead. By 11 p.m, clarity replaced the confusion. This wasn't a military training exercise, nor was it retaliation against a foreign invasion. It was a coup.
Şunu çok net gördük. Bunlar kesinlikle Türk askeri değil. Bunlar hakikaten o FETÖ'cü hainler, sadece Türk askerinin üniformasının içine girmiş bir hainler. Aklı satılmış, kiraya verilmiş. Hani en hafif tabiriyle bunlar vatanı satan hainler olduğunu anladık. Çünkü niye? Ya vatandaşa sıkıyorsun ve elinde Türk bayrağı olan insanlara doğru namluyu doğrultmuşsun, sıkıyorsun. Bunu ne adına yapıyorsun? Sözüm ona, vatan adına yapıyorsun.
A faction of Turkey's military had turned on the government, pitting its soldiers against the very people it was meant to protect.
Herkesin zihninde 15 Temmuz darbesi dediğimizde ilk 3 resim hangisi diye sorsanız birincisi 15 Temmuz Şehitler Köprüsü resmi olacaktır. Biz on binlerle aşağı doğru geldik. Nereye doğru? Askerlerin olduğu yere doğru.
Istanbul's bridges across the Bosphorus are amongst the busiest roadways in the country. They're also geographically significant, connecting Europe and Asia. But when the coup plotters took control of them, it wasn't just a logistical tactic, it was symbolic.
Bosphorus bridges are in heart of Turkey. This action was very important for both the coup plotters and Turkish people. Because firstly, the coup plotters wanted to show their sovereignty and their power.
A power they tried to exert over public and private institutions alike. They bombed police headquarters and attacked communication companies. This is one of the media outlets the plotters stormed that night. It's the home of Turkey's national broadcaster, TRT. In this studio in Ankara, a newsreader was held at gunpoint and forced to read the plotters' declaration from this very desk, live on television. Broadcasters, including TRT World, were terrorised. Soldiers stormed the building and occupied the offices. When the heavily armed troops forced their way inside, TRT World staff say they thought there'd been a terrorist attack and the troops were here to protect them. But very quickly the mood changed. They got aggressive. They forced people to line up, hand over their mobile phones, and then they were forced onto the street. Some networks were forced off air for a short time, but the plotters failed to secure complete control of the media. And that meant Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan could make this FaceTime call and rally the people.
Milletimizi illerimizin meydanlarına davet ediyorum. Havalimanlarına davet ediyorum ve milletçe meydanlarda, havalimanında toplanalım ve bunların o azınlık grubu tanklarıyla, toplarıyla gelsinler, ne yapacaklarsa halka orada yapsınlar. Halkın gücünün üstünde bir güç ben tanımadım bugüne kadar.
What followed was unprecedented. Unarmed but seemingly unafraid, thousands of civilians poured into the streets.
Yürüsek bir şey olmayacak. 5 kişi ölürüz ama 155 kişi geçer.
O gün on binler, ben de dahil, evde oturmayı düşünmediğimiz gibi bize kurşun mu isabet eder, bize bir tank bombası mı gelir? Hiç bu mülahazalara girmeden evimize gitmeyi hiç düşünmedik.
The president's call had changed everything. The coup plotters no longer had the upper hand.
They collapsed psychologically. They lost control and motivation. It is very important.
In the path of oncoming tanks, Turks stood defiant. Brandishing their flags like shields, they refused to be intimidated.
Dedim ben yani bu beni korkutamaz. Benim amacım buraya ne yaptıklarını anlamaya geldim ben. Bunu sormadan da dönmeyeceğim. Yani bu yolun sonu ölüm de olsa yolumdan dönmeyeceğim diye zaten kendi kendime karar vermiştim.
With her two young children asleep in their beds, Safiye Bayat walked alone along a highway to confront the renegade soldiers on the bridge.
Biri öldürelim mi komutanım, biri içeriye alalım mı komutanım? Bunun akabinde binbaşı tabii çok sinirlendi. Kendine çekti, yanağımın üzerinden ateş falan açtı.
With bullet shells at her feet, Safiye stood her ground. The air rippled with tension. But even as the warning shots rang out, no one imagined the soldiers' anger would escalate to this. The army began executing unarmed civilians.
Hacı'yı vurmuşlar, Hacı'yı. O Hacı'yı vurmuşlar, gözlüklü sakallı.
Gözlerinizin hiçbir zaman göremeyeceği bir manzara tabii. Her yer kan, her yer ah.
Vuruldun mu? Vuruldu mu? Tamam. Sakin, sakin. Metanetini kaybetme, sakin.
Her yer hüzün ve gözyaşı. Yani bizim o akşamki gözyaşımız gerçekten bütün kanlara karışmıştır. Yani şu köprünün üzerinde akan gözyaşı kan kadar değerlidir.
Turkey's intelligence agency declared the FETO, or Fethullah terrorist organisation, was behind the plot. Exiled leader Fethullah Gulen and his supporters were trying to overthrow the government.
Hepsine hain diyemem, hepsine masum da diyemem. Allah işlerinde masumlar varsa Rabbim ayıklasın, biz ayıklayamayız. Hainler varsa da ne dünyada ne ahirette gün yüzü görmesinler.
Do you think about that night often, or do you try not to remember it?
Actually, once in a while I ponder about it, I think about it. It just refreshes our memories and basically gives some meaning to our work that we do every day, you know.
Ahmet Berat Çonkar left his children and pregnant wife at home when news of the coup attempt broke.
We decided if we are going to die tonight, that's okay. We will do it for our people, for our nation, for our ideals. But this is the night that we need to resist and we need to show ourselves in the streets.
When he arrived at Ankara's parliament building, he found himself in the line of fire.
A helicopter, a military helicopter is coming, and as soon as I looked up, it just started to shoot indiscriminately. This puts you in a level of shock, basically, because you cannot believe this. You know, there are people demonstrating against this illegal, coup d'etat, and suddenly you are shooting your own people with the helicopters and with the, ammunition which is provided to you by this parliament, by these people, by this budget, and you are killing your own people. I mean, this is a very shocking situation.
Shortly after came the bombs.
All of a sudden, the missile hit, and there was a huge blast and sound, and walls were shaking, the dusts were coming down.
This is the spot of one of the bombings.
Yes, this spot is one of the bombings from the F-16s.
The FETO plotters accused the government of eroding democracy and human rights. Somewhat ironically then, they attacked the seat of the democratically elected parliament while MPs were inside. The parliamentary building was bombed 3 times that night.
And when it happened, honestly, we said, as representative of people, how dare I can hide myself or I can keep myself safe, because people were under attack. If the death comes, it should come to us first. That's the way I think.
Bomba da atsanız buradayız. Ne yaparsanız yapın buradayız.
The Special Forces headquarters and the presidential complex in Ankara were also targeted.
This is unacceptable, honestly. Democracy and coup attempt, democracy and killing innocent people, democracy and bombing, state buildings. This is unacceptable, when they try to associate these two different poles, because democracy is the enemy of, crime, violence, and they committed the worst crime. They committed the worst violence against their people.
I felt the strength at that night to the maximum level. I am telling you this very honestly. I felt a very strong emotion inside myself, and that continued to this day. That gave us a huge confidence, and we were ready to basically lose our lives. We were ready. We made that decision. If this is necessary, this is the day. This is a legitimate cause. This is a legitimate time to do this. That's why, we felt very strong, and still we are feeling that strength. They are the weak ones, but we are the strong ones, because we were on the right side of the history, I would say.
Amid the chaos and the confusion, the bullets and the bloodshed, one question kept being asked. Where was the president? He'd been holidaying with his family at a seaside resort but managed to escape just before soldiers stormed the hotel. In the early hours of Saturday morning, he safely landed back here at Ataturk Airport. Without weapons, ordinary Turks had regained control of Istanbul's major airport.
Biz bu yola, bu kutlu davaya başımızı koymuşuz. Buraya biz canımızla, kefenimizle bu yola çıkmışız. İşgalcilere ülkemizi asla bırakmayacağız.
The scale of the civil resistance was starting to turn the tide. When Tarık Şebik remembers that night, his pain is tinged with pride.
Düşünsenize ya, size eline silah almış, sizin alnınıza doğrultmuş birisi. Yani mutlaka geri kaçarsınız. Ama o gün 15 Temmuz Şehitler Köprüsü olmak üzere İstanbul ve Ankara'nın değişik yerlerinde cereyan eden bu terör örgütünün yapmış olduğu olaylarda hiçbir vatandaşımız geri adım atmadı. Atmadığı gibi her dakika ilerledikçe 10 binler 100 binleri buldu. 100 binlerin sayısı daha da arttı.
And by early Saturday morning, the people had prevailed. Unarmed civilians overpowered the terrorists and their tanks, and the soldiers surrendered. But victory came at a cost. 249 civilians were killed and thousands injured.
Ben 15 Temmuz'u unutamam. Ben çocuklarıma unutturamam. Şehitlerimi unutamam. Tüm şehitlerimi ismen tek tek sayıyor olmam lazım. Herkesin olması lazım.
It's hard to imagine. This is such a lovely park. It seems like such a peaceful spot. It's hard to imagine what happened here.
I mean, as I say, the campus of our parliament is a very nice place, normally with gardens, you know, with the trees, and it's a very peaceful place. And we never thought that this kind of slaughters, this kind of, you know, terrorist attacks could happen here. But it happened. I mean, maybe this is a message to the whole world. It's very powerful. I mean, the message, what happened that night here was very powerful. We are people who defended democracy, the legitimacy, the government, basically, and the people basically showed that they were with us. They sacrificed their lives, their livelihoods for this cause, and I think there is a very powerful message.
It's very powerful
message in this place. Yeah.
Immediately after the failed coup, a delegation of Turkish MPs travelled to the United States to lobby for the extradition of FETO leader Fethullah Gulen.
They don't care. They pretend not to hear even that they are terrorists. So this is something against the core, the soul of being partner, being, let's say, neighbors or a member of the same NATO.
Despite thousands of arrests, trials and prosecutions, Gulen remains a free man, living in exile in Pennsylvania.
Still, I am trying to be hopeful. But one way or another, I think people is going to see, whether dead or, let's say, alive, he will be tried.
On On July the 25th, 2016, just 10 days after the attempted coup, it was announced that the bridge would be renamed. The Bosphorus Bridge became the 15 July Martyrs Bridge. But its new name isn't the only reminder of what happened here. At night, its red glow stirs memories of those who lost their lives, but also of the living who showed such brave defiance.